Hello, y'all, and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a little minute, but it's been a lot going on. And also, before I jump into this, I just want to say, you guys who have been here, you know that I live now in Richmond, Virginia, but I used to live in the Northern Virginia area, and I'm not too far, or I wasn't too far from Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. And of course, everyone saw, probably if you watch the news, about the plane collision that ended in, unfortunately, the loss of everyone involved. So, just wanted to take a moment to send out thoughts and prayers to the family members and anybody connected to those on board, the crew, any passengers, anybody that was affiliated with that situation. So that actually happened yesterday. From the day I'm recording, today is Thursday, almost Friday, and that happened on Wednesday night around 9 p.m. And so I was actually planning to make this video to have it up by this afternoon, but because of that, I ended up not filming. So I'm doing it now, and hopefully it will be up tonight when you see it. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about the books that I read in 2024. So this is kind of like a reflection recap on the books that I read in 2024. Unfortunately, it's not as many as I would like. My goal would be to read a minimum of one book per month, and that's actually my goal for this year. So we'll get more into what I plan for 2025 when it comes to reading and books and all of that. But first, I just wanted to recap the ones that I read for 2024 and kind of tell you a brief summary. I'm not going to get too deep because most of these I did separate videos or individual videos on. So I'll put the playlist of all of my books from not just this year, but also previous years so you can see them in case it's something that you've been thinking about, considering, whatever. And all these are books that I actually read, physical books. I also use Audible, or I have used Audible in the past. Anyway, let's focus on 2024 recap for now. These are not in any particular order, but I will say the book that I'm going to start with is a book that was the last book that I read in 2024. And it's also a book that I'm going to do a separate video on because I think it deserves its on video, especially because of the content matter. So we're gonna start with Blood Sisters by Vanessa Lilly. I wanted to say Eli Lilly, thinking about the brand, but Vanessa Lilly. And this book, as you can see, came from Target, and it's also a signed copy. And the thing about this book, you guys know I love my signed copy books. That's one of the reasons I buy them from um, Target, from the book club. But one thing about this book is that it deals with Native American women, particularly those who live on like reservations, and how when they go missing, meaning whether it be, we think they're kidnapped or whatever the case may be, like when they go missing, their cases are sometimes unfortunately not taken as seriously as um, non-native women, as particularly women who don't live on a reservation. And we already know, as black and brown people, unfortunately, when someone from our community goes missing, um, the resources and the exposure about the case or about that person is not the same when, say, a white person goes missing, unfortunately. Now, that is no fault to the missing people that are not black and brown, but it is something that is just true, unfortunately, about our society. And a lot of times, the misconception when it comes to black and brown, particularly Native women on reservations, because if you don't know anything about Native American reservations, a lot of them unfortunately deal with a few things such as poverty and addiction, both drugs and alcohol, and a lot of sometimes gang activity, depending on where they're located. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, well, there's so many things that could have happened to that person, that isn't related to, I guess you could say, foul play, in the sense of like a random person just like kidnapped them off the reservation, or they left the reservation and something happened to them outside of that. And a lot of times, you do have prostitution as well that occurs. And so we all know that prostitutes, no matter where they are and what color they are not always looked at or treated the same as a non-prostitute. Like some people would say, well, given their choice of lifestyle, it's dangerous and all those types of things. So it's kind of like almost like blaming, well, it's not almost, it is blaming the victim, saying like, you chose a lifestyle that puts you at that risk, so you could get injured, hurt, killed, kidnapped, or whatever, that bad things can happen to you for making that choice. And that's not okay, because that's still a human being, and that's still somebody's relative, aunt, sister, cousin, whatever. Um, and same thing here when it comes to Native Americans, whether it be a woman going missing or just any kind of crimes and things like that, they're not always taking this seriously because they're on the reservation, and because of the negativity that can be looked, or the negative things that can be affiliated with reservation life. And also, there's a little bit of distrust, and rightfully so, when it comes to people on the reservation trusting external, um people, whether it be law enforcement or anything else. So even if someone is coming in and really trying to do the right thing, the community on the reservation is not always, willing to be as open and give the same kind of information. So even though the reservations do have their own uh, law enforcement as well, sometimes they do collaborate with the other law enforcement agencies for that state or city around them, and that can run into a roadblock. So you have all those things, and a lot of that is addressed in this book in general, in terms of just kind of the culture of natives and reservation life, and then law enforcement. So all of that's tied in here. This is a really good book. Blood Sisters is about sisters. They're both Native American. One is a BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, agency, government agency, or unit, whatnot. And one works for the BIA, and the other one still lives on the reservation with their parents, and she has a child. And she also dealt with some addiction problems as well. So you have that going on. So what happens is, um, she goes missing, the sister. And so also, there was another friend of hers when she was a child, when they were a child, both of them, the sisters, when they were children, they were growing up, something bad happened, like a very bad situation happened. The two girls were witnesses, they were there, and it happened to one of their friends. And so the girl that is the BIA agent has, she kind of ran away from it by joining, like working for the BIA and all of that. And she hasn't even been home in years, because she's just kind of been avoiding it because of that negative experience that occurred when she was a child. So she is kind of forced to go back home and face a lot of things that she had been running from for years. And I think she gets more healing from it than she thought she would. But also the fact that she's very passionate. Part of the reason she works for the BIA is that she does investigate other native crimes, and she understands the cultural aspect, and she also gives the attention and the respect that should be given to cases, when it deals with Native women particularly, but any natives, because they feel like, the outsiders, which would be any of us who don't reside or have never resided within a tribal community or on a reservation, do not give that sometimes. And sometimes it's willful ignorance. Sometimes it is just, you know, again, those stereotypes that come with, thinking about people who live on a reservation, and sometimes just the truth of what it's like living on a reservation. But either way, everyone should be treated the same when it comes to, a crime occurring and investigation and all of that. So that's part of her mission. But Sydney is her name, the BIA agent, and you learn a lot about her. And also, as she is unraveling this mystery of what happened, she learns about the events that occurred when she was a child didn't quite play out the way she thought they did, and also people who are responsible, and how that whole family is connected, and how everybody's connected to a lot of things that we see, is particularly with natives as well as on reservations. And in general, you have the age old story, the white man versus some group of color. This just happens to be the Native American group. But if you really think about it, when it comes to history and issues with that, it's always them versus a black and a brown person. That's something we should be watching, because history continues to repeat itself. It's just a difference on who's on the black and brown side that rotates, but it's always them versus somebody from Black and brown community. But either way, this book is really good. I'd recommend it. I typically don't go for hardback books. I prefer the paperbacks, but this is a relatively new book and it sounded really good, so I picked it up, and I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed it. It got me to the point where I just kept reading to see what was going to happen. So it does pull you in. And I'm not sure how much this book was. I think Target was doing one of their specials where it was like buy one, get one half or something like that. And so I picked it up during that sale. But again, it's a signed copy. So I will, pay for those. So check that out. Next up, we have a book by another favorite author of mine, Tiffany D. Jackson. This one's called White Smoke, and this is kind of like a horror or scary type book. It's YA, young adult, but it is a really good book. It's an easy read, quick read, I would say, because you're going to get into it and you're going to want to read and find out what's going on. This was her first, her being the author, her first horror, scary book. Typically, her books are about other real life issues. Um, but this one was her first attempt at a scary, basically a different genre essentially of book, and I think it was done very well. It even got a compliment from R.L. Stein. If you don't know who that is, that's the Goosebumps guy, and that means you're probably too young to be here if you don't know nothing about Goosebumps. But yeah, White Smoke, would highly recommend this one as well. And like I said, I did do a separate video on this, so you can check it out if you want to know more about the story itself. Another book we have is Heads of the Colored People. Now, this is a book of stories, so it's not just one story. And you can see here it's kind of broken up, but these deal with kind of like again societal issues when it deals with like race and gender and just it's a very thought provoking book. So I know sometimes we read or watch things on TV or whatever where we don't want to have to think or don't you we just kind of want to clear our heads and just, not have to be thinking about anything or whatnot. This is not the book to read for that. It's not something that's like constantly throwing something at you. It's kind of like a subliminal. I don't even know if I want to say subliminal, but it's kind of like one of those read between the lines, but it makes you think because you are kind of like analyzing what the author's really trying to say without them saying it, but it's written so that you do get the point. And so it also makes you think. So it is a book that will have you in thought. It would be a good conversation piece if you want to think about doing it for a book club or anything like that. And the author is Nafisa Thompson Spears. And it's also won a few awards as well. It's a literary or PEN America Literary Award winner. And it's also a uh, National Book Award long list. So it's gotten high praise, and it is a very unique book in terms of how it's written and what it talks about. So I really do enjoy it. It talks about race, identity politics, and the contemporary middle class. So that's just to give you an idea of some of the issues that are thought about in here. And it's from the perspective of a black person that's a black man or woman, um, or whatnot. It's from the black perspective in these books. So just keep that in mind as well when you're reading. But like I said, I think it'd be a good book for anybody because it does offer that perspective. Um, and also people, even though they may be black people, and I know some people don't know this, is that all black people don't have the same experience when it comes to society and different issues. So that also comes up. You'll see that in the book as well. And I think that's an important topic to look at as well, because sometimes people just assume, well, if you're black and you went to college or you went to an HBCU, you all had the same experience, no matter what HBCU you went to, no matter what kind of background you had, you all had that same experience, and it's really not the case. A black person from the projects is not the same as a black person from an elite um family, that comes from generational wealth and had the best of the best schools and the best of everything versus someone who had to do everything they could to fight, claw, and get crawl out of where a bad situation and then make it to the top. So those are two different things. So all of those types of issues are addressed in that book. One Summer in Savannah is a novel, also a Target. As you'll see, I am a big fan of Target Book Club books. One Summer in Savannah is by Tara Shelton Harris. And this one is also, it's, the book itself is, I wouldn't say it's not thought provoking throughout the whole book, but the concept of the book in terms of, it's about forgiveness. The theme is about forgiveness. And it's, the question on the back says, can you ever truly forgive if you can't forget? And I'm not going to give you, again, I did a whole separate book on this, I mean, video on this, but the main points here is that the main character, she ends up going back to her small hometown in South Carolina after her dad gets sick, and she had basically run away. Not run away as in like a kid, run away from home, but I mean, again, dealing with issues. She ran away from those issues by going off to school somewhere else and kind of starting her life over in a different state where nobody really knew her and all of that. And you'll find out why and what all happened, but it's just her and her daughter. She's a single mom. Her daughter is her everything. She's super protective of her. She is an author, and so she's been very successful doing that. And so she's kind of been in her own little bubble away from home. And then when she has to go back home, she kind of has to face those issues. And you start to see that part of that deals with forgiveness, and you understand how someone, given what happened, something happened to her. So you understand what happened to her and how that ties into her either trying to forgive or considering forgiveness, and why that could be, or why it is important um, for her to do that or to even consider that. So I would recommend One Summer in Savannah. Again, it is one that you will, once you get into it, you will probably want to continue to read. So I really liked it. All right, and we're coming to the end of 2024. And again, those were in no particular order. This one is In the Time of Our History by Suzanne Parry, also or Perry, also an autograph Target book club selection here. This one is very interesting. It deals with a multi-generational situation with women who were from, I think they're Persian, if I remember correctly. Or no, I'm sorry, Iranian immigrants. Um, so you have a family that has immigrated over. The girls, there are two girls, they're sisters. They were raised here in America, so they went to, American schools, whatever. One of them kind of follows more of the traditional Iranian uh, culture when it comes to marriage and, family life and all of that, and just how she carries herself and behaves. And then the other one is like the rebel, because don't we always have a rebel when you have sisters or two kids or whatever? And so, um, in this story, the older sister, who is the rebel, is returning home to New Jersey. She currently lives in California. She's like a interior designer or architect or whatnot, something along those lines. And she returns home to New Jersey, which is where they were raised, because her sister ends up dying. And so she's returning home for that 1 year. They have, in that culture, there's a 1 year kind of like anniversary celebration thing. And so it's that 1 year celebration for um that for her sister. And so she's returning home to be with her parents and other family members as they celebrate, but also mourn and just kind of remember her sister. So you find out more about that. But what you realize is that the part of the reason why the older sister, who is the rebel, moved all the way across the country is because her and her dad just did not um, see eye to eye on some things. Because the funny thing is, they're very much alike, and so they butt heads, because that's like any kid and their parent. A lot of times, the kid that has the most tension with a parent is probably because they are that parent's clone. And so, no difference here. And I think, the dad secretly was torn between what he trying to keep that Iranian culture intact, while also trying to blend into the American. So it was like he was struggling. He was really having that, but he thought he was doing the best thing by trying to hold them to the Iranian culture. Because sometimes, even though you come over to a different country and you start assimilating to some extent within your own community, still sticking to the cultural norms and values is important. And especially for groups like Iranian culture, Middle Eastern cultures, a lot of times stricter cultures, especially when it comes to women, if you don't follow those cultural norms, then you and or your family can be outcast within that community. Even though you're here in America, you could be outcast by your native cultural community. So that's kind of where the dad was, and he was successful. They had a good life, but that's why him and his oldest daughter had issues because she was rebelling against that culture, and the younger daughter, which is the younger sister, she was kind of more like his, as some people would say, the favorite, but she was the model uh, daughter when it came to following the cultural norms and rules. So you'll see that dynamic, and you'll see her relationship with her dad, and how that you'll get more information on the background as to how it got to where it is, and also you'll see it evolve throughout the book. So, and she also learns a few things about her sister that she didn't know, which kind of gives her a different insight or perspective on who, the sister that she thought she was, or who she thought she was, and who she actually was. So she learns some very interesting things too along the way. So it is a really good book. Um, I'd recommend it. Like I said, this was another Target book club selection. Most of my books are very easy to access. They do a great job of promoting authors, especially around different times. Like I think this one was out around Women's History Month, which is March. So check those out. They're usually in the electronic section, and like they have the new or the bestsellers and all that. I love their book display. So they usually, and they have at least my targets have a pretty decent um, display, or have a pretty decent selection of books to choose from, for almost anybody. I know they have tons of anime. They have, cookbooks. They have biographies, the new ones out, and all of these autobiographies, biographies. That's kind of a thing right now. And then, all of the newest and popular, the Colleen Hoovers, all that stuff. So that is, I know people feel how they feel about Target and all of that, but I'm going to do another video about that, but how they feel about that. But if you are still shopping at Target and you do like to read, I would suggest their book club selections. I had never heard of a good chunk of those authors in books. The Heads of the Colored People did come from Amazon, so that one was not Target, but the rest of them came from Target. I think White Smoke and Heads of the Colored People came from Amazon. The others were from Target. But they do have a good book selection, and I do have tons of other books on my to be read bookshelf that also came from there. So I'd recommend them as a source for purchasing books. They're a little bit cheaper, or usually cheaper than going to the bigger bookstores like Barnes and Noble. Um, so yeah, just keep that in mind. But speaking of Barnes and Noble and Colleen Hoover, I am showing you that was all of what I read for 2024. Let me know down below if you read any of those books. And also check out my individual videos when I get a little bit more in depth about each one. But currently, talking about 2025, my goals are pretty simple. I would like to be able to read at least one book per month, which would be a total of 12 books per year. I hope to be able to read twice that at the most, or at the minimum, but at least 12 books this year. That would be my main goal. And I'm on track, I would say, because I have finished one book for this month, and I'm in already started a second. So that will be going into February. And since February is a little shorter, it's okay that I got a head start. But let's talk about those, and then we'll be wrapping up. These, I just finished reading Verity by Colleen Hoover. And if you have never read a Colleen Hoover book, which I had not, I know she was really popular with all of like kind of her series of books. I've seen them all. I think the covers are beautiful on a lot of them. And I even watched the It Ends With Us movie that is on Netflix, I believe it was on. Yeah, Netflix. I had not read that is a book, and I have not read the book, so I can't compare the two. But I will say that the story was decent. It was, I don't know if I would want to necessarily read the book, but I did like the message that was in the overall message from the movie. So I did enjoy the movie. But Verity is really different than what, from my understanding, from what Colleen Hoover typically writes about. From my understanding, she's more of a kind of a woman has an issue, but solves her issue, or comes out on top type situation, or maybe some trauma, whatever. That's typically her books with a little bit of love thrown in there. But this one, a little different, a little bit different, but it is good. It is a good book. I'd say probably if you want to try out the Colleen Hoover stuff, this might be the first book that I would recommend. Then at the same time, it probably is not what you're used to reading if you typically read her books. So that makes sense. But I heard a few people talk about this, saw a couple of YouTubers also highly recommend it, and they weren't lying. It's a very good book. And the twist in this one, because there are twists, um, I liked it. It's kind of a little dark. It's a little dark, and I like it. But it's a good book. And I got this one. This one was actually a gift. This is my Secret Santa gift. We were able to do the wish list, and I put it on there. So this one I was able to do. I will say the main character, or two main characters. You have Verity is the name of one of the characters, and Verity is an author, or she was like basically it was like Colleen Hoover in the story. Like she was like a very successful author had this series, and she's um she that was her fame, rose to fame, whatever, as an author with that series. And then something happens. And then enter a second author who is also a female, and her name is Lowen. She is the other kind of main character in this story. And so we start seeing how everything unfolds and how Verity and Lowen lives kind of start to cross paths or intertwine or whatever. So it's a really good book, and I promise you, when you think you have it figured out, there's going to be yet another twist that's going to make you rethink everything you ever thought about the book up until that point. But I highly recommend it, especially if you like books that have little twists and turns and a little bit of dark side to it. And last but not least, and I will do a separate video talking about that in more depth, but yeah. And so currently I am reading Who's That Girl by Eve. So this is Eve's memoir. So she wrote it, Eve's the rapper, Evie Eve, Rough Rider. So I'm just now into it, not too far in. I'm about 50 pages in. I'm on chapter 4, or about to start chapter 4. So that's where I am. This will probably be my February or going into February book because I've already started it, but going into February book. But so far, I'm enjoying it. I've seen a couple of things on Eve when she did a video with Patricia Bright when she did kind of like a empowering women type series, and I really loved her interview with Eve, or her interview slash conversation with Eve. And so when I saw the book was coming out, I knew I was going to get it. And I also went to Barnes and Noble for this one, and I got the signed copy of this one. You can also pick this up at Target though, if you don't care about signed copies, because I think only Barnes and Nobles had them, or you can order them directly from like the publisher, and I think it's also on Amazon. But either way, I again want the signed copy, so I bought it and I paid $30, which is the full price, regular price for it. But and it's only in hardback right now because it just came out. So, but I think it's also on Audible. So if you're somebody who does like Kindle and Audible, I think it's available on there as well. So just want to put that out there. We'll be giving my thoughts on that and Verity coming soon. So if you do like those books or you're interested to hear what I think about them, make sure that you like and subscribe, and also comment down below. Have you read Verity or any Colleen Hoover books, and just your general thoughts on that? And then also, if you're interested in Who's That Girl by Eve, like, would you pick that up? Would you be interested in that as well? So thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And also let me know if there are any books that you would recommend that you think I would like based on kind of what you've seen me read either this year in this video, or if you look at some of the ones that I did from previous years, like my I Don't Mind Young Adult. I love it. I used to teach high school, so I read a lot of young adult books, and they really are pretty good. Some of them uh, are better than adult books. So yeah, anything you think that I might like, feel free to put that in the comments as well, or if you'd like for me to read it and give a review. And also in the comments, I have my Goodreads link. I haven't updated it in a while, so I'm gonna go back and do that, and also start my book challenge there too, accountability, and probably try and upload some reviews maybe this weekend on these books, because I don't think I really gave these too many. So I'm gonna try and update that profile and kind of do a little bit more on there. But definitely check it out. And you can follow me if you like on Goodreads as well. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you